Greetings from Houston, Texas. Mike coming at you from AT Astro, and in a joint production with Pythia. My first collaboration with this phenomenal forensic astrologer. Well, she's an all-around great astrologer, but you specialize in forensic astrology, correct?
Correct, I do, and thanks for having me on, Dennis.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Miss Pythia.
So I started doing forensic astrology over 10 years ago, and it was actually done as a way of learning horary astrology.
Mm-hmm.
I would practice on the charts of like people who had recently gone missing to see if the outcome would match up with the reading. Unfortunately, a lot of people that go missing are not ever really found, or it, can take like 10, 15 years and then you get an answer. But yeah, I just kind of hit the ground running with it. And now I do it all the time.
Yeah, just to boost your ego a little bit, I'm going to tell everybody that Pythia is a fantastic forensic astrologer, but she's actually just an overall fantastic. She's very well rounded with astrology as well, and I do believe you offer consultations, correct?
Correct, I do.
I will be posting contact information for Pythia at the bottom of the page, so that if you do wish to contact her, you are more than welcome to do so. She does employ a lot of Hellenistic astrology, which I do as well, which I really respect. I think that's one of the things that kind of brought us together to begin with.
I think so.
Unfortunately, well, no, I wouldn't really say unfortunately. Interestingly, we will be covering a very dark topic today. We will be covering what forensic astrology entails. We will be not necessarily looking at death charts, but we will be analyzing the charts of individuals that have met a rather unfortunate end. And there's no cut and dry way to predict death, correct?
No. No, absolutely not. Every chart's unique.
What's your opinion on approaching death from an astrological perspective?
I really think death is something that should be looked at in hindsight. It's better to, look at a chart and compare it to transits at that time, the time of death, look at progressions, look at solar arcs, do what you do, see what you see, usually there is something to see.
You know what I think is cool about death in astrology is it actually gives a really realistic view about death. Death means something completely different to everybody. Death is not, something as simple as you just go to sleep and never wake up.
Right.
Death to some people can be a release. Death to some people can be, something absolutely tragic. Death in itself is a subjective experience, just like the human experience in general. And so that being said, it's impossible to put together a complete algorithm to predict somebody's death. But attempting to do so and attempting to use event charts and solar arcs, progressions, transits, they offer us a wealth of tools to assist people who are trying to find closure on what happened. Especially that's what forensic astrology and forensic horary is the best at. It's helping solve cases. I mean, astrological evidence, I guess, probably wouldn't hold up in court too well, but in the actual process of the investigation, it is invaluable. So
yeah, it's very helpful to families who really have nowhere else to turn. After a while, the police have no leads, a case goes cold, and for example, a mom will do anything to find her child. Why not try astrology? And for my forensic readings, I don't charge any money to help these families because you can't promise them that they're going to find a body.
Yeah. It's just helpful. Astrology is just really helpful in so many ways, and this is a rather macabre way of astrology, a rather macabre method for astrology, but it's still helpful. And so what experience do you have applying forensic astrology, if you don't mind talking about that?
Applying it to what do you mean?
Like, in what instances have you actually? I know you've been involved in a couple cases before. You don't really have to go into it, but any experience, like what's your experience actually employing forensic astrology? Like, what have you worked on? What have you helped accomplish?
Well, there is one case that is still, the suspect's in jail awaiting trial. It's been a long time. He murdered two young girls, Kara Kopetsky and Jessica Runyons, and I worked with the friends and the family of Jessica Runyons really closely uh, during the time Jessica went missing and was found. And those readings are available on my blog.
Yes. So you were able to provide consequential information in regards to assisting the investigation.
Correct. I was. A lot of that information is not in the blog post because there's a gag order on the court case.
Yes, understandably.
And nobody's perfect, and young girls aren't perfect, and there are some secrets they had, and you don't want to share things like that with.
Of course.
I mean, it's not like really.
You don't want to. It's already a difficult time for the families to begin with. Are you going to drag their reputation through the dirt too? I mean, that's or bring out unnecessary personal details. Not that I'm implying that there would be anything, with with Jessica Runyons or the other woman that would, even be there to drag through the mud. But still, like to pull their personal information out like that is just disrespectful, in my opinion. So, death is considered. Attempting to predict death, especially in the course of a consultation to a client who is still living, is considered to be highly taboo.
It is.
Yes. The United States doesn't have any type of governing body for astrologers, so you can technically do whatever you want here. But in other countries, like let's say the United Kingdom or Australia, there's actually, a certification system for astrologers. And them finding out that you have been attempting to predict death as a prediction for an individual is a one-way ticket to getting your reputation destroyed, and any type of certificate that they've given you null and void. You basically get blacklisted as an astrologer, and it's not easy. Like you shouldn't do it. Like, what if you're wrong? It's notoriously difficult. Death means something to everybody else. Death means something different to everybody. So I mean, imagine, like, as an astrologer, it is not ethical to tell somebody that you think they might die, or you think that you just can't do it.
Yeah, no. But it's kind of polar opposite when you're talking about like a lot of Indian astrologers, and they'll just say it. They will just say it, and I don't know, maybe they just have culturally different views than us surrounding death. You know what I mean? Maybe it's just not that taboo to them, and they're more accepting of it. I don't know.
Well, I've actually heard of Indian astrologers, like with arranged marriages. Apparently, like for one woman, let's say, like she has an indicator in her chart that her first husband's going to die and she'll be a widow. So they'll go ahead and marry her to a goat real quick and then kill the goat.
Oh my God, what?
And so that when she gets married to another, it'll be her second marriage. I was like, this.
That's great.
Yeah, no, it makes no sense whatsoever. But at the same time, Vedic astrology is very, very powerful if used the right way. But, like any type of metaphysical subject, it can be abused. I actually found out that I have a Lakshma yoga in my Vedic chart, which I was pretty happy to hear. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I actually really don't know very much about Vedic astrology. I know a little bit, but I have a little bit, but no, I don't know much.
Well, me and you are the same, and we practice Western astrology. And I am a firm believer that you need to pick one discipline and master it, and it's almost impossible to master this, unfortunately. But
absolutely, yeah.
If you want to be any good as an astrologer, you can't be all over the place. You got to pick something and work on it consistently, and try to like master all the concepts in that before you can really try to begin moving out into a different field. Vedic astrology is good, Western astrology is good, but they can't be combined really. They're rather incompatible, even though they're related. But anyway, that's enough about Vedic. So there were a couple charts that we were thinking about going over today. It's interesting because you can look at somebody's chart, notably in a female's chart more than anything else, unfortunately, because, well, in terms of victims of abuse, females are historically have been a little bit overrepresented as being the victims of abuse. And you can see predispositions. You can see someone with that needs to be very careful about the type of relationships they get involved in and the types of people that they surround themselves with, because you can see personality traits that attract malicious people. And a great example of that would be JonBenet Ramsey.
Yep.
In fact, I was going to dive right into this real fast, and I'm going to screen share real quick, and we're going to pull up JonBenet Ramsey's chart.
Perfect.
Yeah, I know you've been looking it up a little bit. I am fascinated by JonBenet Ramsey's chart, and I know you are too.
I am. It's a rough chart, though. I mean, it really makes you wonder when you see like the charts of like some murder victims are just, it's so tough on them, like the aspects and the placements that they have. And you always wonder, like, would this have happened no matter what? Like, if I was this person's astrologer and we had a consultation and I was like, hey man, be careful because you've got this and this going on, could anything have been prevented, or would it have happened anyway?
Well, I believe Chris Brennan has talked about an issue that he kind of came across whenever he was really getting into ancient Hellenistic methods and diving into zodiacal releasing, and the realization that unfortunately some things can be predestined and determined. Like, we don't necessarily have complete control over our fate. And that's why they refer to the parts, the part of fortune, the part of spirit, as lots, the lot of fortune, the lot of spirit, because it's representative of your lot in life. And unfortunately, that's what I believe. There actually are astrologers that really do not agree with this. This is just my opinion. I'm not stating it as absolute fact, but some people just get dealt a really, really shitty hand. And it's not that they deserve it. It's just because, I mean, astrology is like the handwriting of God, in my opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would.
And God works in ways that are infinitesimally complex, and we can never begin to understand the reasoning behind it, but it is what it is. So this is JonBenet Ramsey's chart, and I have set the date for the transits and progressions to December 25th, 1996, and then that was the date that she was found. For those who don't know, JonBenet Ramsey was a child pageant. I don't know if that's the right way to describe that. Child pageant. I mean, how would you even say that?
Beauty queen? Child beauty queen?
She was a child beauty queen. And she was called in missing on December 24th, 1996. And they found her 8 hours later, unfortunately deceased in the basement of her own home. And there's a lot of suspicion on who could have done it. The case remains, as of yet, unsolved. So I know you've been looking at this chart a lot over the past couple of days. So what is up with this to you? Like, what do you notice? What sticks out? Like, what?
Well, when I looked at the chart, what surprised me the most about it was I was checking zodiacal releasing. Not that I know a whole ton about that. You know a lot more about it than me, whereas I'm pretty dang good with perfections. But
Yes.
I'm newer to zodiacal releasing. And she has something called a loosing of the bond coming up from her path of fortune and her part of death in October of 2019.
October 2019. That would be in this period. Yes, you're right. October 2019. The lot of death, according to you, falls in the lot of fortune as well, which means the lot of death is moving at the same speed as the lot of fortune. So That in itself is a little bit ominous. The lot of fortune has to do with things that are outside of your control. And of course, death is always outside of your control. But the fact that the lot of fortune and death were in the same sign and they're both going to be experiencing a loosening of the bond at this point. So when you said that, it kind of made my jaw drop.
When I saw it, it made my jaw drop. I was like, whoa, and as far as, the loosening of the bond goes, I can see that it's happening. I'm not sure what it means for JonBenet and her case, though. But I really hope it brings some closure to her family because they've been through a lot.
Yeah. For those who don't know, a loosening of the bond and zodiacal releasing, when you start with the part of fortune or the part of anything and it releases through the chart, it spends a period of time in each sign. And a loosening of the bond occurs when it breaks sequence. It breaks sequence and then jumps to the other side of the chart, the opposite end of the chart. And several things could happen. It can be a dramatic change. The biggest thing, the most common manifestation of the loosening of the bond, however, is something that was started in the previous loosening of the bond, and then it gets actually repeated. You know what? Actually, part of fortune. Where is it? Is there another loosening of the bond? Level 2, 1996, 7, 2000. I wonder when her case was closed. I don't even know. But anyway, usually when you find a loosening of the bond, something that was started in a previous cycle all of a sudden comes to completion and gets finished whenever the second loosening of the bond occurs. And that is just something.
Yeah, I'm really hoping it means, closure for her case or something. I mean, it would be really nice to see this case solved. She died in 1996, and I was like maybe like 14 or 15. I don't remember, but I just was like, what the hell? I had really never seen anything like it.
Yes.
As far as like media scandals, like the family getting dragged through the mud and being put on trial, the child beauty pageants are just really, really weird to me. So
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything like that before, like a tiny child looking like Tammy Faye Baker or something. Like it was crazy. I'm from Washington, and over here, we just don't do stuff like that, I guess.
Yeah. Texas, it happens a lot. So just starting off with her chart in question, here's the thing about her parents. There are some things in her chart that worry me, specifically in regards to her parents. So we have the sun at the base of the chart conjunct the IC, and it's very negatively aspected. It's aspected negatively to Pluto, to Mars, to the moon. There's literally no positive aspects being made to it whatsoever, and it's at the fourth house cusp, which could mean the mother in modern astrology or the father in Hellenistic. And then the moon is in the same exact situation. That's no positive aspects whatsoever, and it's conjunct the midhaven, which is the father or the mother. And that shows serious issues related to the parents. Now, granted, that could potentially mean just her being put in a negative situation as a result of her parent. I mean, she was a 6-year-old beauty queen or 6 or 7-year-old beauty queen, which in my own personal, in my own personal subjective opinion, you should not sexualize a child like that. But that's just my opinion. Some people would definitely beg to disagree. Another thing,
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. Mars is in the 12th house of hidden enemies, and it's very heavily aspected. It's making a hard aspect to Pluto, and that's at a very, very tight orb. And when you see that in somebody's chart, in a woman's chart, it's very common for the woman to project that, not intentionally, but to project that onto people around her or onto a man. And women with hard Pluto Mars or hard Venus Pluto aspects are heavily overrepresented in the charts of victims, or victims of abuse, or victims of stalkers, or people with malicious intent, unfortunately. Another thing that I noticed is Pluto in transit came conjunct the part of fortune at the time of the incident taking place. And that's significant to me from personal experience, because every single time I've had a major planet come in contact with my part of fortune, it happened to me when I was, in 2013, I had Pluto and Mars both come conjunct my part of fortune. And since the part of fortune represents things that are outside of your control, something big can go down. When it happened to me, I got robbed at gunpoint randomly in the middle of the night as I was walking home from Walmart. And they actually robbed me, and I tried to run away, and they put guns in the back of my head. But it just, that alone was coinciding with heavy transits being made to my, part of fortune. So it was difficult for me to ignore that one particular aspect. What else do you notice? Is there anything else sticking out to you?
Well, I have to agree about the path of fortune. Having Pluto conjunct it, that really, really stands out. But regarding that, when I was looking up for transit charts, I really wanted like an exact time. So I went and I looked it up, and Patsy called 911 on December 26th at like 5 something in the morning, like 5:53 or something like that.
24th or 25th or 26th? Because she was found on the 25th.
She was found on the 26th.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was incorrect.
Yeah. Okay. So that day, or that moment actually, Patsy called 911, and the ascendant was also transiting the path of fortune and transit Pluto at the same time in Sagittarius. So, I mean, that's pretty profound to me.
You're talking about the ascendant was transiting JonBenet's chart?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Also conjunct her path of fortune.
What else did you notice about the event chart? Was there anything else that stuck out to you about the event?
One thing that really sticks out to me is that Sagittarius rules her 7th house cusp. And in forensic astrology, they say that when you have a dual-bodied sign, which is like Sagittarius, Gemini, Virgo, or Pisces, you might be looking at a case where there's more than one perpetrator involved. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting to me about that is when I was doing the research, looking for like a timed event chart to compare to the natal chart, they were talking about like DNA evidence and stuff like that. And I actually read up on that, and there were 2 different DNA samples found in JonBenet's underwear, and they were not from a family member.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, I mean, that stands out to me too. Now, if we were going to read this like a Harari chart, we would want to look at the significations of Jupiter. And here, let me look it up really quick and give you a little synopsis of keywords for people who don't know about Jupiter's significations. So, typically, a well-aspected Jupiter, if I recall, hers is not well aspected, would bring like good fortune, luck, abundance, and what's really interesting about that is Jupiter also rules foreigners and middle-aged men. So, I mean, that might be like a small snippet of a possible suspect description. So that's pretty interesting, because the 7th house does rule open enemies, fugitives, the perpetrator, thieves, and dealing with the public.
Yes.
So
Well, actually, I found it really interesting just on the whole subject of the 7th house. I know I'm about to go way left field out of this. There's a really, really auspicious transits going on at the very beginning of July. And a lot of these very auspicious transits, like the Thor's hammer pointing towards the Mercury-Mars conjunction in Leo. will be coinciding with a new moon that will be occurring in the 7th house of the United States' chart. And then when you look at everything that's going on with Iran right now, I can't help but find that a little bit
ominous.
Yeah. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Did you notice that as well?
Yeah, I did. And if I recall, there a couple of the eclipses touch some points, and they have the U.S. natal chart right here. Let me grab that.
Oh, I've got it too. Never mind. I'll let you.
I grabbed the wrong book and brought it up here. I don't have it.
Oh, I got it.
Fortunately.
1 second.
Sweet. Okay.
Now I'm going to pull up. There's going to be transits and progressions, but we can disregard those for now.
Yeah, no worries.
This is a chart of the United States.
Right, and so actually, I think the eclipses might be at earlier degrees, so it's going to be Cancer that gets activated. Let me look at my eclipse table really quick, and I'll tell you the exact degrees of those. So here we are, 7/02/19. We have 11 Cancer. It's going to hit the sun. I think it's like 6 degrees, within 6 degrees of any planet, it's going to get activated. So it's going to whack that stellium pretty hard.
Yeah, the full moon is actually the lunar eclipse. So is it the lunar eclipse or the solar eclipse that occurs on the full moon?
It's the lunar eclipse.
That'll be occurring on the vertex and the part of fortune of the United States' chart.
Oh, shit. Or no, is the path of fortune? Yeah, it is there. It's 26 degree. So it's gonna oppose that. The lunar eclipse at 24 Capricorn.
Yes.
And it's gonna be conjunct our natal Pluto here in the U.S. And yeah, that's concerning, you know.
That's very concerning.
And it's something I've been thinking of a lot, because over the next couple of years here, we're going to have a Pluto return. And it's like, oh, great. What the hell does that mean, right?
Well, it usually means, see, a lot of people consider it to be a lot more dangerous than it actually is. It definitely signifies a shift. If you look at the Roman Empire survived multiple Pluto returns. But
oh, really?
Throughout that 206, like it went from the Roman Kingdom turned into the Roman Republic. The Roman Republic turned into the Roman Empire, and then on the final lunar return, the Roman Empire just kind of broke in half.
Wow.
The British Empire lost its empire, but the country wasn't destroyed. It just lost its empire. It dealt with World War II, right, coming up on its Pluto return. So now I wanted to go to a different chart. Would you prefer to check out this chart or this chart?
Either one's good with me.
We're looking at Jessica Runyon's. Now, there's a lot of information that can't be divulged about the particular case. But at the same time, it is worth taking into account. So Jessica Runyon was found in 2007. She disappeared in 2017 in September, correct? And when was she found?
She was found in April of 2017, I do believe.
2017?
Of 2017. But I don't remember the exact date. Let me look it up really quick.
Yeah, so they didn't find all of her, unfortunately.
Right.
They only found her head, which is just shocking to me.
And one femur and another head, somebody else's head, Kara Kopetsky's head.
Yes. If you look at her chart, however, it is very difficult. It's a very difficult chart. There's a couple aspects that would point to issues related to somebody else's anger, not necessarily sexual abuse, but dealing with abuse as a result of somebody else's anger. The Mars opposite Pluto aspect is the orb is very tight, very, very tight. And
yes.
so, do you see the date yet?
I haven't. They're not giving me exact dates. I'm digging through some news articles, trying to find something, anything.
That's totally fine. Actually, I remember. I think we're right. I think we're right on time. Okay, so the first thing you'll notice about her chart, from my perspective, is Mars in conjunction to Chiron, and those both being one in a very close conjunction, and both being in hard aspect to Saturn, which is painful. Saturn is the main malefic in her chart, as it is a night chart. So Saturn being in hard aspect to multiple planets here is just extremely challenging. She has sort of a grand cross. The orbs are a little bit off, but it's still pretty much active. Is it a grand cross? No, it's not a grand cross.
No, yeah, no.
No, it's just a series of squares. She actually has a mystic rectangle. And there's actually such wonderful potential in this chart, which makes this extra heartbreaking. But Mars conjunct Chiron in a female's chart, and then Mars in opposition to Saturn's chart, that can be wounds related to masculinity, wounds related to somebody either asserting themselves onto her, or sometimes it can be somebody exerting themselves onto somebody else and causing a lot of damage and creating a lot of guilt. But that does not seem to be the case with this chart. Saturn is traditionally associated with death in Hellenistic astrology, and Mars is traditionally associated with violence and war, and that it's just not good. So, what do you notice about this whole thing?
I just noticed that there are a ton of squares and oppositions. I always get really concerned when I see the malefics, especially if, like when they're involved with Chiron, and especially just like, Pisces is a tough sign, Virgo is a tough sign. Like, it just is, it's concerning. And then you've got her sun there, and it's opposite that Neptune Uranus conjunction. That's, and if we were using whole sign houses, that would just be her 8th house, and they would be in the 8th house.
Yes.
So yeah, those things really stand out. Another thing that stands out to me is that transiting Mars crossed over, or sorry, not Mars, the transiting moon crossed over Chiron and Mars, over those few days. I don't know. Did we use the date she was found, or the date she...
That's the progressed moon. So the progressed moon would have actually, because there was a couple months elapsed, correct?
Yeah, from September to April. So
yeah, the progressed moon would have been crossing over right around that in that time frame, active in all of those aspects. And then she also has a very interesting yod. She has a yod, and it's pointing to Mercury at the anaretic degree with Pluto and Uranus. And I mean, they call it the finger of fate. Like this, she was fated for something. I'm not gonna say that anybody's fated for, tragedy like this, but there is definitely some sort of karmic or predetermined fate, and the yod will definitely push you there. I just the chart ruler's in the first house, and the first house, which is the body, it's very negatively aspected. And it's aspecting Mars and it's aspecting Saturn, and that's just violence to the body. It's bad. It's not nice.
Yeah, so, and what's interesting about that Mercury's placement is that it is conjunct a fixed star, and it's called Betelgeuse, and it can bring about fame. That's one of the key words associated with it. and she definitely was famous because of violence being inflicted on her body.
Yes. So using using these types of charts isn't always, well, you can do death charts for an individual that didn't die by malicious means. And you can usually see very ominous things at the period of time that somebody does meet an unfortunate demise. And a great example of this is Pat Tillman. We talked about Pat Tillman prior to this, correct?
Yeah, we did discuss Pat Tillman, and I had never heard of him before. Somehow I overlooked the whole thing.
Pat Tillman was a professional football player for the Arizona Cardinals, and he actually, after 9/11, I'm not sure how long 9/11 had elapsed when he did it, but he decided to join the U.S. military, and he was deployed to Afghanistan. And unfortunately, while he was in Afghanistan, he was struck down by friendly fire in the middle of a very intense firefight at the Afghani-Pakistani border. And it's difficult to look at because he does have a yod, and it's pointing to the 5th house or the 6th house in whole sign. And the moon and Lilith are conjunct at the apex of this yod, and this yod was activated both by the North Node in transit and by the moon in progression at the time that something bad happened to him. Also, at the time that he was unfortunately taken down. And then we also have Lilith conjunct the part of fortune, and I consistently seeing the part of fortune activated during the periods of death. It doesn't always mean that you're going to die, but it's relatively consistent that I see the part of fortune activated at the period of someone's demise. Yeah. And then simultaneously we have Pluto that just crossed over the ascendant, and then it had gone retrograde, so it was about to cross over it again. So it was definitely within orb of activating the ascendant. So that's just difficult.
Yeah, that's wild. The Pluto on the ascendant there really stands out to me. And then it looks like we also have that progressed Sun and Mars conjunction moving on down to Neptune, and I'm not sure if they're with an orb, or if it would mean anything, but
it's kicking off the leg. It's kicking off the leg of the yod for sure.
Yeah.
The yod is aspected, and the yod is aspected in multiple parts. Also, 11. Where's the midhaven at? The midhaven is at 8 degrees. So no, it wasn't really coming that close into aspect of him activating the fulcrum. But I will say, though, that the midhaven was activating Uranus exactly, and that sudden occurrences, and that's in the 11th house. It's at the cusp of the 11th house, and the 11th house has to do with ideals, sort of like the 9th house, but grander ideals. And just the midhaven has a lot to do with how you come off to the world and your way of being seen by the world. And he wasn't really well known prior to what happened to him in combat, but him, unfortunately giving up his life for his country shot him into the public eye. He was actually almost martyrized. He was, he became a martyr for, well, unfortunately, I hate to say it like this, but he became a martyr for neoconservative agenda. His heroism was used to fuel a political narrative, but it was a sudden event that occurred to him that, gave him that recognition as an American hero. I don't like that they took his death and how they used it. I don't really, that just kind of really bothers me. It does not sit well with me, but that's just me.
Yeah, so, I don't know much about how it was, used or anything like that as far as politics goes, but it's funny that Uranus being activated there in the 11th house of friends and organizations that you're involved with and groups you belong to, and I do know they say he died from friendly fire.
Ooh, God. So yeah, this is definitely a very interesting. It's very an interesting concept to check out the natal charts of individuals who have dealt with tragedy or been involved in tragic circumstances. So tell us about using horary or horary. I really don't. Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's horary.
Horary.
Yeah. So what did you want to know about it? There's a lot to cover.
How do you? Well, I mean, give us a little bit of a rundown on how you use it, because horary you would use in a circumstance where you don't know, you don't have a precise time to do an event chart for the last known whereabouts of the individual. Like, what is something you look for? What type of questions do you ask? Because I know asking the right question is integral to producing a good horary reading.
Yeah, usually I just I'll ask where's the victim, and if if I will try and do everything I can to get an event chart, like a time-stamped event chart or event to use. But, that doesn't always work out, and there's not always, that information isn't always available. And sometimes when it is available, it's not accurate anyway. Police will keep details to themselves and not share it with the media and the public. I worked on a case where one girl, it says, wide and far across the media, hey, she was last seen at 9:30 p.m.
Yeah.
But that's not true. She was last seen at 11:30 p.m. And for some reason, I'm not sure why, that was kept under wraps.
Really?
Yeah, and I was able to say like, well, hey, they left the party, they went to this place, and they were like, yeah, yeah, you're right. That's, where they went. And
Do you feel that using an event chart is just far more accurate than a horary chart?
yeah, it's I don't know, you can get a really good Harari chart and get a whole lot of details out of it, just the same as an event chart. Um, but usually when under the guise of Harari, okay, it's like basically like if you ask a question, the stars have pity on mankind and they will answer the question. Now, an event chart is like a collective question, right? I mean, when somebody goes missing, you've got a lot of people saying, hey, where's my mom? Where's my daughter? Where's my son? Um, and there are, so many people who are asking that question at the same time. So it's always really good to find the time of an event chart.
Okay. Yeah,
But a Harari chart will work too.
I know that the whole premise of creating an event chart is that if you can judge and place the start of an event, you can get a good view of the finish. And
Right.
that's the whole premise of doing event charts. And that's why it's so important to use those. You can use them for so many reasons. I mean, you can use them from planning the right time to sign a lease to trying to find out the fate of an individual who went missing or the whereabouts, or you can even use it to find the best time of day to brush your teeth.
You sure
If
can.
if you really want to be that neurotic. But I wouldn't do that. But there's so many options available. Are there any other methods that you have used in the past that are a little bit more off the wall, or is it just straight up horary, event chart, transits, progression? Oh, solar arcs.
I do use solar arcs, and I will often look at a missing person's solar arcs. If I have a time of birth and accurate data, I'll look at that. I'll look at anything I can look at, any kind of astrology method, any good predictive method to try to find somebody. I'm willing to try just about anything.
Beautiful. Well, it looks like we've got just about the big things, the big details, out in terms of forensic astrology. I mean, there's so much to learn about it. I mean, we could sit and we could even one day teach a class on like the specifics of using horary, because I know the biggest thing with horary and event charts is certain signs and certain planets actually point to like directions, and it's
Right?
it's very 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 complex. Like it would take us to really detail it out about what 12 hours, and you still wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you'd have to read and read and read to understand it. I mean, the best way to learn it though is to just grab a book on Harari, draw up your chart, and go through the questions step by step. You know what I mean, with your book, and just do that over and over until you get it.
And then once you find out the answer, go back and review the horary chart and find out
Absolutely.
where the horary chart was telling you, and take note of that. And that's a great way to learn. I do that a lot. So this has been wonderful. This has been. I mean, I'd like to call it fun. I find this thing interesting, but I feel bad calling it fun. But this has been
I know,
really
right?
informative. Yeah. I think that we actually just produced a great piece of reference work for people who are trying to understand the implications of astrology in this particular field. So, that being said, I will be posting down at the bottom information to get a hold of me as well for regular, readings. I do basic natal chart readings. I specialize in predictive. I am wonderful with relationship readings as well as producing event charts. But if you are looking for anything related to forensic astrology, or if you just like Pythia style, I will be posting her contact information down at the bottom as well so that you can get a hold of her. Be a pal, like and subscribe. And I will be coming out with more collaborations soon. And I would like to formally invite you as of this moment to collaborate more often if you're okay with that.
I would love to. I've had so much fun today. Well, yeah, fun. It's weird to use that word, but I have really enjoyed our talk. So
Next time we'll be drunk.
yes, let's do it. We'll do it at night.
We'll do drunk
It's like,
astrology.
yeah, it's like 3 p.m. over here, so it's early to get a start on that.
Well, I mean, it's not too early. Anyway.
Right.
Right. Well, until next time, guys, I appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we'll be at you with more content soon.
All right. Thanks, Dennis.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.